The church stands on war. J.F. Kennedy once said, "Mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind." Sadly, history shows us that more human lives are lost in wars than in any other activity. It appears that nations are running a race to be the first ones to put an end to mankind. Looking at the rapid rate at which they are accumulating weapons of mass destruction. St. John Paul II, in his encyclical Centesimus Annus, says, "The threat of an atomic war weighs upon the whole world, capable of leading the extinction of humanity. War can end without winners or losers in a suicide of humanity." Pope Francis says, "In reality, every war turns out to be a fratricide that destroys the very project of brotherhood inscribed in the vocation of human family." He says that war is born in the heart of man from selfishness and pride, from the hatred that induces to destroy, to enclose the other in a negative image, to exclude and erase him. What the Pope says is so very true in the ongoing war that Russia has begun in Ukraine. What is the stand of the Church with regard to war? And what are her teachings on wars? My dear brothers and sisters, Christians are called to be peacemakers. Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Matthew 5:9. He also says, "Love your enemies." Matthew 5:44. Through these words, Jesus invites us to reflect on our obligations in the face of conflict and hostility. Christians are called to love everybody as God does, seek their good, and genuinely do good even to those who are hostile towards them. Christians must positively seek to build peace. Catechism of the Catholic Church says that peace is not merely the absence of war. We can say that it is a positive state of mutual love and harmonious cooperation in which people protect, promote one another's fulfillment. When Christ comes again, he will establish forever a kingdom where perfect peace will reign. A kingdom of justice, love, and peace. There cannot be true peace in the absence of justice, love, and freedom. Perfect peace is a gift of God, which comes down to us from God. We cannot establish perfect peace on earth. God is the Lord of history. God's kingdom, His perfect kingdom, will come when He chooses. Dear friends, we cannot expect perfect peace on this earth. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24:6, we find, "There will be wars and rumors of wars." There is so much injustice and oppression, animosity, conflict, and hostility in the world. We cannot expect perfect peace on this earth. But dear friends, in this world, we can expect what Saint Augustine called tranquillatis ordinis, a tranquility of order. Tranquillitas ordinis is a peace or tranquility which comes with dynamic order. An order which comes about due to the work and cooperation of the law-abiding citizens and the lawful authorities who work for the common good. It is a peace where there is absence of strife, living in harmony achieved by lawful authority, ordering society for the sake of temporal good. A tranquility of order is a peace found in a just state, which has a good government and just laws, which punishes those who cause harm, mistakes, and disorder, which promotes human flourishing among its citizens, which works for their safety and protects them, which allows them to enjoy a measure of freedom to practice their religion and seek their ultimate good. It is in this context of Tranquilitas Ordinis that we can understand Catholic teaching on war. To preserve this peace in the earthly city, it is necessary to punish injustice. For example, Russia has disturbed the peace in Ukraine by initiating war against it. Injustice must be punished by moderate and proportionate means in order to restore the just order which has been disturbed. This moderate and proportionate means can include war, but only as a last resort. Ukraine can use legitimate defense to punish the injustice by moderate and proportionate means, which includes using force against Russia, but only as a last resort. The usual means of preserving the peace of earthly city is through talks and dialogues, diplomacy, conciliation, treaties and agreements, and all the lawful procedures of national and international politics, and through the work of international organizations such as the United Nations. In the religious sphere, we must seek and worship God. He will usher in the kingdom of perfect peace in His own time. On this earth, it is our responsibility as citizens and the responsibility of civil authorities to work for peace and justice in the temporal sphere by appropriate means, which include the rational and prudent use of power. 3 misconceptions we should avoid regarding war. 1. People say we must rid the world of war, but we cannot do this. We all desire it, but it is difficult to get rid of it when there are people like Putin. Only God can do it. Our task is more limited. It is to ensure the order of the earthly kingdom by appropriate political means. We can at most give people justice as far as it lies in our power and try to limit war. Misconception number 2. Many people argue that because Jesus said we must turn the other cheek and love our neighbors, and Himself went like a lamb to the slaughter, therefore it is immoral for Christians to fight in a war. This is biblical literalism. It is a simplistic reading of the Bible devoid of reasoned analysis. If Ukraine doesn't exercise its legitimate defense against the invasion of Russia, it will allow its citizens to be killed. It will allow itself to be destroyed. Misconception number 3. Some people think that we can actually rid the world of war by refusing to take any part in it and by condemning it as unjust. This is utopian thinking. This stance can only be taken at the expense of justice. You cannot have both justice and pacifism. You can only renounce the use of coercive force if you are willing to allow oppression and the violation of human rights. My dear friends, we are going to look into the just war tradition. It seems that the early church accepted that war could be fought for just causes. This insight came from Ambrose, Augustine, and much later, Thomas Aquinas and others. It has come down to us as the just war tradition. We find it in Catechism of the Catholic Church, numbers 2307 to 2314. It is a tradition which is represented in our catechism. It is important to note that the Church deplores war, but accepts it as a just punishment, a sort of useful expiation. The Church authorizes just wars and at least tries to put limits on unjust ones. St. Augustine is the first to distinguish between just war, that is, wars fought for avenging injustices, and unjust wars are the wars that are fought against harmless peoples, wars fought out of desire to harm, wars fought out of thirst for power, wars fought to enlarge the empire, wars fought to obtain wealth and acquire glory. This is what is happening in Russia. This is what is happening in the war that Russia has waged against Ukraine. St. Thomas Aquinas speaks of a just war as long as three conditions are met. First, that it is declared by the authority, like it has the permission of the UN. Two, that there is a right cause to remedy a damage or a violence. Three, there is a right intention in the combatants, that is, they have the intention of promoting good and avoiding evil. He also places restrictions. It may happen that war, even if it is called by legitimate authority and the cause is just, nevertheless, because of the bad intention, it becomes illicit. In fact, quoting St. Augustine, he says, the desire to do evil, cruelty in revenge, implacability of soul, ferocity in retaliation, like all other things. In fact, quoting St. Augustine, he says, the desire to do evil, cruelty in revenge, implacability of soul, ferocity in retaliation, lust for domination, and the like are all things that are rightly considered a fault in wars. The just war. It is important to note that the Church deplores war, but accepts it as a just punishment, a sort of useful expiation, as we have said. The Church authorizes just wars and at least tries to put limits on unjust ones. In number 2306, the Catechism of the Catholic Church praises those who, in their work for the protection of human rights, renounce violent and cruel means and use only those means of defense which are available to the weak. This gives witness to evangelical charity. But the text adds, so long as this is done without prejudice to the rights and duties of others and of society. This means that violence means of defense may be used if none other will be sufficient, but non-violent means are preferable in themselves. In Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 2307 and 2308, we are all urged to pray and work for peace. And in the words of Gaudium et Spes, we read, as long as the danger of war remains and there's no competent and sufficiently powerful authority at the international level, governments cannot be denied the right to legitimate defense once every means of peaceful settlement has been exhausted. There's a right to go to war. The jus ad bellum, the moral justification to go to war. The text in Catechism of the Catholic Church 2308, cited from Gaudium et Spes number 79, briefly states the classic conditions which must be satisfied before going to war. To justify war, these are the classical conditions that have to be fulfilled. These are known as the jus ad bellum, the right to go to war. 1. There must be a just cause. In the past, there were several causes which were thought to justify war. For example, to defend one's country against unjust aggression, to get back territory which had been annexed unlawfully, to punish a wrong against one's citizens, etc. The church teaching, as we see in the above quotation from Gaudium et Spes, calls it a legitimate defense. The war must be waged by the legitimate civil authority. Going to war must be a last resort. All other means of redressing injustice, short of war, must have been tried and found wanting. There must be a good chance of success. If there is not, a great deal of damage and loss of life will take place for no purpose. The war must not be expected to bring about more harm than is proportionate to the evil to be eliminated. Now we go to see what should be the moral conduct during war. It is called jus in bello. The actions taken in the prosecution of war are subject to ethical criteria. Traditionally, two criteria are mentioned: non-combatant immunity and proportionality. Non-combatant immunity: just war is a defense against unjust aggression. Non-combatants cannot be attacked. Non-combatants include the bulk of the hostile nation's population. The citizens of the aggressor nation may wholly approve of the war, but as they are not doing any active harm, they cannot be attacked. They also include prisoners of war and wounded soldiers. To attack the innocent is to act unjustly. To kill them is murder. The Catechism of the Catholic Church in number 2313 makes a special mention of the extermination of peoples, nations, and ethnic minorities. It calls these mortal sin. Clearly, violation of non-combatant immunity represents one of the intrinsically evil acts of which Veritatis Splendor reminds us. In this connection, the Catechism number 2314 quotes Gaudium et Spes number 80, para 3. Any act of war aimed indiscriminately at the destruction of entire cities, extensive areas along with their populations, is a crime against God and man himself. It merits unhesitating and unequivocal condemnation. The second criteria, proportionality. We must always bear in mind that the lawful aim of war is to prevent injustice or to restore violated justice. War making must not go beyond this to trying to eliminate or destroy the opposing nation or to take revenge on the citizens of the aggressor nation. They too have rights, and those rights must be respected. Wars are fought to restore peace and order, not create injustice. War of self-defense becomes illegitimate when the damage it entails are not comparable with those of tolerated injustice. Pius XII said it in one of his discourses. Furthermore, even in a war of self-defense, weapons of total destruction, and above all, weapons that escape the control of man and cannot therefore be limited to the strict requirements of defense, cannot be used. Their use must be rejected as immoral, because in this case it would no longer be a question of defense against injustice and the necessary safeguarding of legitimate possessions, but of the pure and simple annihilation of all human life within the range of action. This is not permitted in any way. Again, this is said by Pope Pius XII. Conclusion: even if it is a just war, war is always a disgrace because of the effects that it causes. The Church's intention is not to justify war, but to avert the danger of armed conflicts and to prepare the time and conditions for absolutely forbidding war. Gaudium et Spes number 80 says that every act of war that indiscriminately aims at the destruction of entire cities or vast regions and their inhabitants is a crime against God and against humanity itself, and must be condemned firmly and without hesitation. It is therefore the promotion of peace rather than the legitimation of war that is the concern of the Church in our time. Thank you. God bless you.